All right, Zum Gali Gali. All right, so it's good to get ready for Pesach, Passover, and what better way than to start off with a couple of jokes.
No, I'm leaving the room.
Why was the matzah kicked out of shul?
Because he wasn't kosher for Adler.
Because he wouldn't rise.
What? I never rise for you.
So,
Oh God.
How many pharaohs does it take to screw in a light bulb?
How many pharaohs?
Yeah.
None. They don't know how to screw light bulbs.
No. Only one, but he won't let go. Okay.
Good, let him burn.
All right. What is the best Passover cheese?
What?
Best Passover cheese, yeah.
Cheese?
Best Passover cheese. Mozzarella.
That's not kosher.
All right. I'll do I'll do one more. I have others, but we have to save them for next time. What happens when you clean a vacuum cleaner? No. When you clean a vacuum cleaner, you become a vacuum cleaner. Now that's a deep one.
AI gave me that joke.
No, AI did not give me that one. That was a deep one. Okay. So, it's a good one in my books. Okay. So, it's good to see you all as we get ready for Pesach, and as promised, the class is going to be split into really two different sections. One is on a more inspirational topic of Passover. Specifically, we're going to talk about matzah, and then we're going to get into some practical thoughts and ideas as we get ready for Passover. In preparation for Passover, there's really Passover is a large holiday because there's a lot to do. It is of the most observed Jewish holidays, and there's preparation for Passover, and then there's Passover itself. And so I'm hoping that these classes will uplift, number one, your preparation for Passover, and number two, your actual Passover experience at the Seder, and finally, of course, it will also uplift the feeling and the meaning of everything that you're doing. So we're going to start with matzah, okay? So it's not mozzarella, but matzah. So what is the reason that we eat matzah? Anybody knows? Why do we eat matzah?
Leaving to leave Egypt, there wasn't time for it to rise.
Very good. So many people will tell you, when they were in the process of leaving Egypt, there was no time for the matzah to rise, right? They were in a rush, and there wasn't enough time for the matzah to rise. The question is that really the reason we eat matzah? Is there another reason that the Jews ate matzah?
There's nothing better. What was the best thing in the desert?
All right, so we're going to start with the first reason that you mentioned. And let's take a look here in the text. And this is a quote from the Haggadah. Harold, you got it right. You actually quoted from the Haggadah. And the Haggadah says, matzah zu, it says, this matzah that we eat, what is the reason? It is because the dough of our ancestors did not have time to rise until the King of Kings revealed himself. The Holy and Blessed Be revealed and redeemed them. So basically they were baking. And don't forget, back in the day, they didn't have yeast, they had sourdough. So it probably would take even longer than 18 minutes to rise, depending on how you're dealing with it. But putting that aside, we might deal with that later. And there was no time, and God revealed upon them quickly, and there was no time for them to bake. Okay, so this is, again, what we read in the Haggadah. Haggadah tells us, again, the reason why we eat matzah is because the dough didn't have time to rise as they were rushing out of Egypt. So let me ask you a question. So they left Egypt on the day of the 15th of Nisan. What were they doing the night before they left Egypt? Anybody knows?
The night before?
What were they doing the night before they left Egypt?
Packing.
Huh?
Other than packing.
Okay, other than packing. Yeah, what were they doing? Who remembers the biblical narrative? Nobody? Anybody has an idea what they were doing the night before Passover?
They were praying.
They were praying. Anybody knows what happened the night before Passover? There was I mean, praying, yes, but there was something big that happened the night of Passover.
The flying over to the first.
Ah, very good. God was
On the first Monday.
very good. That's why it's called Passover. The night, okay, the night that we celebrate the Seder is the night that God was going from house to house, killing every firstborn. Okay. And God passed over the Jewish homes. That's why it is called Passover. And the Jews stayed in their home. They had blood in their doors. But what were they doing inside of their home?
They were eating.
They were eating. Okay, they're Jewish. They were having a Seder. Very good. And what were they eating at that Seder?
Matzah was one.
And a Passover lamb, right? The blood came from the Passover lamb, and they were eating a Passover lamb and matzah, right? So what's this whole story that, oh, we eat matzah because they were in a rush, didn't have time to rise? They actually made matzah, nothing to do with being in a rush. They made matzah to eat that night. Where does this whole thing that they were in a rush come in? Right? Again, the night of Passover, the Jews were sitting in their homes. God was jumping over the homes, and they were sitting in their homes with their Paschal lamb that they put the blood on the doorpost and eating matzah. So when did it become that because they were in a rush, that's why we eat matzah? We were going to eat matzah anyways.
That was the interpretation, because they were going to eat matzah because they didn't have time for it to rise for that meal.
They had time for it to rise for that meal. They were in Egypt for 210 years until that meal.
They were leaving.
They didn't know they were leaving, but they didn't leave till the next day. The night of Passover, God struck all the firstborns at what time? What time did God strike the firstborns dead? Midnight. Very good. God struck the firstborns dead at midnight. Before midnight. That's why I put you some other juice.
It's too sweet.
Before midnight, what were they doing? Very good. They were sitting in their homes and they were eating matzah. That matzah was not because they were in a rush.
They purposely made it that way.
Exactly. They purposely made it that way. Let's go take a look here. Let's take a look here in Exodus.
The Bible's not true.
Some of it. Everything in the Torah is true.
No, I didn't say Torah.
Everything in the Bible is true. The Bible is the Torah. All right, let's take a look here. All right, so this is a commandment from God to Moses in Egypt, okay? So here we have Exodus chapter 12. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, then, okay, we're, all right, I'm going to skip. The first one is, this shall be the head of the month. Let's go to verse 3. Speak to the entire community of Israel, saying, on the 10th of this month, let each one take a lamb for each household. But if the household is too small, I'm just going to attach it to the microphone here. But if the household is too small for a lamb, then he and his neighbor who is nearest his house will take one according to the number of people. Okay, so here's talking about taking what's known as the Passover lamb. Okay, so it gives details on the Passover lamb. Let us continue. By the way, if one of you want to speak, I'm not sure if we'd hear you. You might want to test it, but anyways. Okay, let me go back here. So it continues again, verse 3 tells them on the 10th of the month. Okay, 10th of the month, they should take the lamb, and it gives details of the lamb. Then it says, and you shall keep it for an inspection until the 14th day of this month. Okay, and so they're going to slaughter it on the 14th day. Then they should take some of the blood, put on the doorposts. And on this night, so the night of the 14th, which in Hebrew becomes the 15th, okay, they shall eat the flesh, roasted over fire, and unleavened cakes. So the word cakes is funny. I wouldn't ever call matzah unleavened cakes in English, but the Hebrew word is matzah, okay? And unleavened cakes with bitter herbs, they shall eat it. So there you have it. 4 days before they left Egypt. They knew about it. They baked it specifically to have a Seder. in Egypt.
14 years.
Okay, they had the lamb, they had the matzah, they had the maror, they had everything.
The first Seder.
That was the first Seder, yes. Was in
It
Egypt.
was also the Last Supper.
So,
It was.
The first Seder was in Egypt, yes. Then he continues.
so in other words, it
Yeah.
started then and
Continues
God
now.
said, this is what I want you to do.
Do forever, yeah.
And-
Yep. Okay. And then it continues as you go further down. For 7 days, you shall eat unleavened cakes, but on the preceding day, you shall clear away all the leaven from your house. That's an important verse because that tells us not only do we have to have no leavened bread in our house on Passover, but even starting the day before.
All
right. For whoever eats leaven from the first day until the seventh day, the soul shall be cut off from Israel. And on the first day, there shall be a holy convocation. On the seventh day, shall have a convocation. No work may be performed on them, meaning the first and seventh day, there's no work. Today, rabbinically, we do 2 days on each side. You shall watch over the unleavened cakes, for on this very day I have taken your allegiance out of the land of Egypt, and you shall observe this day throughout generations as an everlasting statute. So that is a prophetic statement, of course. God is saying, why are you going to do this in the future? Because I will have taken your people out of Egypt. Okay. And he continues again, going over the fact that you shall always eat matzah on the first, for 7 days. Okay. And then Moses commands it to the people, and he tells it all to the people. All right, so there you have, and then here you have verse 29. There was midnight, and God smote the firstborns. Pharaoh tells the Jews, get out. And here it says, let's get to verse 34, right? So, all right, so let's look at verse 33. Okay, so at midnight, God smites the Pharaoh. Pharaoh tells them to go, and then the Egyptians took hold of the people to hasten to send them out of the land, for they said, we are all dead. The people picked up their dough when it was not yet leavened, their leftovers bound in their garments on their shoulders. So here's the first mention of the idea that they had other dough. So presumably what happened was they didn't leave Egypt that night. They actually left Egypt the following day. Okay, so they had the Seder that night. At midnight, God started to smite the firstborns. Pharaoh started to go around. Remember, you're talking about 2 million people to get them out of a land. So even in a rush, 12 hours is pretty good. All right. So this is, all right, now here we have, verse 39 says, they baked the dough that they had taken out of Egypt as unleavened cakes, for it had not leavened, for they were driven out of Egypt, and they could not tarry, and also they had not made provisions for themselves. So here it's saying like this. Here it's saying that why did they eat unleavened bread after the first night? Because they were in a rush. Now, the problem is, as I said before, that's not the problem. The problem is,
Nobody complained.
no, the problem is that clearly the reason why we would eat matzah as unleavened has nothing to do with them being in a rush. Though it is true they were in a rush and their bread had no time to rise, but they were commanded to eat unleavened bread before they were in a rush. Right?
That could have been God preparing his children, saying, this is what I want you to eat. And he didn't tell them, this is what you're going to be eating on the journey.
I understand. The thing is, the night of Passover, which we commemorate every year,
Right,
seemingly should be commemorating the first Seder.
right.
And that first Seder, they ate matzah, nothing to do with being in a rush.
I haven't seen sourdough matzah.
Matzah is just flour and water.
Is the round one.
If you do sourdough, it's a real problem.
But you said that sourdough.
I meant sourdough that there was no yeast in it. But they don't put any sourdough starch in the matzah. No. So this is our problem. This is our lead-in question of the night. Why do we eat matzah on the night of Passover? What is the... All right, I got it. We're told to, but the problem is in the Haggadah, we say matzah zu, this matzah that we eat because right. That was the first text I showed you. Okay, I'll show you from the Haggadah again. Let's take a look here. Okay, share. All right, here in the Haggadah, right? I'm going to quote for you. This is what we say in the Haggadah. This matzah that we eat. What is the reason? It is because the dough of our ancestors did not have time to rise before the King of Kings, the Holy and Blessed be He, was revealed to them and redeemed them. So it doesn't say because they were commanded to eat it. It said it did not have time to rise. Okay. So very interesting. Okay, so we are going to give you a fascinating Hasidic or Kabbalistic, however you want to look at it, explanation of what is going on over here. I in fact, again, this question is something that pops out to everybody. Someone asked me, if anybody who reads the Torah will have this question. If you look at the Torah, you'll see, well, first we're eating the matzah, nothing to do with being in a rush. And then it says we're in a rush, that's where we're eating matzah, what's going on? So I want to point another thing in the Hebrew. In the Torah, there's something very interesting in the Hebrew, and this is where I love Hasidic philosophy and Kabbalistic insights, where they really explain every single word of the Torah. So if we go back to the first verse of Matzah, we have it was what verse was it? What verse is it? 17. Okay, verse 17.
The unleavened cakes.
Okay, no. So that's not, so this chumash is not going to show it to you. Okay. The problem is like this. It says in verse 18, take a look at verse 18. All right, if you look at this verse, it says in the first month, on the 14th day of the month in the evening, you shall eat unleavened cakes. All right. So what is the Hebrew word for matzah? Matzah, very good. You got it right. Okay. Now, what is the Hebrew word for matzah's plural? Matzot. Very good. Matzot. Matzot. So how would you spell matzot in Hebrew? You'd have a mem, the m sound, a tzaddik, the o, the cholam, very good, and then a taf. So here's the thing. The word matzot, plural, for matzah has actually two ways of spelling it. In Hebrew, there's the O sound, right? There's two ways to do the O sound. You either put just a dot above the letter, or you put the dot above the line known as the vav. There are two ways to spell. There's a vav with a dot on top of it. Okay, that makes it an O sound. So again, there's two ways to make an O sound. Either just a dot or a dot over a vav. Here's the fascinating thing in the Torah. In this verse over here, in verse 18, which gives the commandment of eating matzah, before they left Egypt, it writes the word matzot without a vav. Right there, that word. You see how it's three letters? It's written without a vav. Then, if we go to verse 39, which is after they leave Egypt, it says, here you have matzot with a vav. Yes, here you have matzot with a vav. Sorry, I didn't highlight the right letter. Okay, see?
But the way they write it on the boxes now, it's without it.
Matzot. I'm not sure how they write it now. It's very interesting questions, right? Okay, so again, in one place you have it written with a vav. In one place you have it written without a vav. Why is that important? Or why is it written differently? Everything in the Torah is written in a very specific way. Every letter in the Torah has to be written correctly. If you write the wrong letter in the Torah, you might think this is just like, Rabbi, what are you doing? If you write a Torah in the first verse with the vav, with the extra letter, then that Torah scroll is not kosher. If you write the second matzot, without the vav, that Torah scroll is not kosher. Every single letter in the Torah is exact. We've been writing it for thousands of years. Until today, there is only a debate about one letter in the Torah.
What?
No, the different area of the Torah.
No.
All Torah scrolls, Sephardic, Ashkenazic, they're all written the same except for one letter. There's a question. There's one word. There's a question if you write it with an aleph or an hey. But beyond that, every single Torah scroll is written the same exact way. Yes.
Those are all handwritten, right?
They're all handwritten. And imagine this. We're talking about societies where they've been very separated, okay, for thousands of years without the communication that we have today. And nevertheless, all these Torah scrolls kept true to exactly how to write the Torah. We are copying the Torah exactly how God gave it to Moses, right? That is what our Torah scroll is. God dictated to Moses exactly how to write the Torah scroll. And so the Vav there or the Vav not there is exactly how God wanted it to be. And therefore, we believe there is a meaning to the existence or the missing letter Vav. Yes, what's your question?
I don't even know how to put the question. It is not there and it is there, but in two different.
Correct. In two different places. In the matzahs before they left Egypt, it says it without a Vav. In the matzahs, plural, after they left Egypt, it says it with a Vav. Why? That's what I'm going to answer.
Thank you.
Is that the question?
Yes.
Yes, of course. That's what I'm getting to. Okay. So in Hasidic parlance, in you know what? I'll start with this. I'll start with this. What defines in a spiritual sense what is greater and what is lesser? What is higher and what is lower? Okay, let's give you an example. Okay, we imagine we pass away, we are souls, and we go up to heaven, and we may rise level upon level upon level over thousands of years as our souls have passed away, right? We believe our loved ones, right? When someone passes away, we make a l'chaim, we say, may their neshama have an aliyah, may their soul rise. What does it mean for a soul to rise? What does it mean for an angel? One angel to be higher than another? If we're talking about a spiritual space, what does it mean for something to be higher or lower?
Closer to God.
Closer to God, okay, but obviously not physically. So what do you mean by that?
The soul, your soul,
What does it mean to be spiritually closer to God?
your soul.
But how, that's the question. How does your soul get in what makes it closer to God? If you're in the same space, so to speak, right? Where there's no space, your consciousness.
I'm not gonna be there because I will slow. Don't laugh. I told
How do you get higher or lower or closer or further?
Climb a ladder.
You know what? I'll give you the answer, a very simple answer.
Okay.
We use this in the physical world as a terminology. I might visit two people. I might visit one person who lives right next to the synagogue and another person who lives far from the synagogue. And I might say, oh, the guy who lives closer to the synagogue is further from Judaism.
Further from
Judaism.
the closer one?
I might say the guy who lives closer to the synagogue, he's further from Judaism.
That's Andy Marshall. Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, he's not Jewish. But how is that possible? Because it's not about it's about a consciousness. It's about, well, in this case, it's a practice, but I'm trying to present to you the idea that closer and farther can be metaphysical. Here as well, what makes somebody closer or farther from God is their consciousness of God. It is their God consciousness. The soul, correct, their connection. But I wanted what makes the connection greater is how much they perceive God, right?
A lot of people don't.
In other words, truthfully, everything is God.
There's a whole bunch of people that don't believe in God.
Okay, so they are metaphysically far from God.
That's what we're kind of talking about.
They're not physically far from God, but they're metaphysically far from God, right?
That's-
Correct. So as it pertains to souls or angels in heaven, the greater consciousness of God that you have, the closer you are to God, right? So Moses got close to God, not because he went up on a mountain, okay? He got close to God because of his
belief.
his perception and his ability to feel and sense God in a much more tangible way and to be conscious of God in his life in a way more than we do, right?
So in 2025,
Yes, in 2025.
this is belief.
Is this related?
I feel like I do feel like.
So, right, so you-
I feel
Right. So you feel more of God's presence today than you did 5 years ago. So you would be,
more than a year ago.
or a year ago. So you could say that you are currently closer to God,
I've changed.
right? So all that is to say is that let's think about this. The Jews before they left Egypt versus after they left Egypt. When did they have a greater consciousness of God? Before they left or after they left? After they left, right? Right? After they left Egypt, they had a greater consciousness of God. God saved his greatest plague for last. We read earlier in the Haggadah until God revealed himself. We're not even getting into the fact that then they saw the splitting of the sea. So the revelation of God was much greater when they left Egypt than before they left Egypt. In fact, we know the Jews in Egypt, many of them weren't too eager to leave Egypt, right?
No.
So this is the idea. The letter Vav in Hebrew is kind of like a straight letter. And in Kabbalah, in the Kabbalistic teachings, it always refers to the ability to like draw down. Think of like chutes and ladders. The letter Vav is like a straight line to draw down. So the letter Vav signifies that you've been able to draw down godliness farther down into this world. And what does it mean to draw down godliness into this world? That this world becomes more God conscious. And so this is the idea, is that the matzah that we ate before we left Egypt was not as great as the matzah that we ate after we left Egypt. Because what ultimately is matzah? Why is matzah flat? What is the significance of matzah? The significance of it being flat? Not rising, right? What's the significance metaphysically? We talk about matzah as being the bread of egoless, right? It's flat, less ego, no ego, it's flat, right? Ego is when you feel yourself. No ego is when you feel God, right? So matzah signifies a God consciousness, a lack of ego. When was the matzah greater? When did matzah give us a greater feeling of faith and connection to God? After we were redeemed from Egypt. Before we were redeemed from Egypt, yes, we felt God to a certain extent, but not as much as after we had left Egypt. And that is why the matzah before they left Egypt is spelled without a vav, because their consciousness and their faith in God was not as great as after they left Egypt. Matzah signifying less ego, that's why it's flat, and a feeling of godliness, a God consciousness in your life. And therefore, the awareness of God was greater after they left Egypt. And the Kabbalists explain, this also explains to us something very, very interesting. About the matzah that was there before they left Egypt, they made it intentionally not risen, right? The matzah after they left Egypt, it said it couldn't even rise. They were in a rush. But mystically, what that means is they were at such a level, they were at such a consciousness of God that there would be no puffing, there would be no ego. In other words, before they left Egypt, it took a lot more work to feel God. It took a lot more work. After they left Egypt, there was such a revelation of God. God was so revealed that there was no even place for an ego. There was no place for an ego because God was revealed everywhere at that moment, taking his entire nation out of Egypt. By virtue of God's revelation, there was no ego. There was a consciousness of God. It wasn't something we had to work on. It was just God shining his presence upon this earth.
But Egyptians had to believe there was a God if after those firstborn were gone and all the other.
Well, they did actually believe at that moment. They had a short memory. They forgot a little bit while later.
Well, but after all the plagues and all that, they had to know something was going on.
Yeah. So in a sense, we would say the matzah that they ate after they left Egypt was even greater than the matzah they ate before they left Egypt, because the matzah after they left Egypt was a matzah that had a giant revelation of God to the point where there would be no ego even possible, because God had revealed himself to all. But we're not done, because what I'm going to say is that the matzah we eat today has actually both the benefit of the matzah they ate before they left Egypt and the matzah they ate after they left Egypt, because there is one problem with the matzah that they ate after they left Egypt. You know, the problem with that matzah, I've been saying, wow, it's so amazing. There was no even place for ego. The problem was that matzah did not come from their own effort. The matzah that they ate after they left Egypt was God revealing himself. The reason they felt God was because God revealed himself. But as I said earlier, just like the Egyptians, when God reveals himself and we don't work on it, it's so much easier to forget. It's so much easier to lose it. We just read in this last week's Torah portion how the Jews, shortly after the giving of the Torah, built a golden calf 40 days later, because the less you work on something, the less it sticks. The less you work on something, the less it sticks. The less it's going to be there and remain. So there's a benefit on the one hand to revelation. The benefit of revelation is always greater. But then there's a benefit to our own work, because our own work means it's become a part of us. And so the Kabbalists tell us like this: the matzah we eat today has the benefit of both sides. Think about it. The matzah they ate after they left Egypt was not a mitzvah. It was a mitzvah to eat the night of Passover. It's not a mitzvah to eat the other days of Passover matzah. You know that, right? The mitzvah of eating matzah is only the first night of Passover. All the other days, you could just choose not to eat matzah. You can't eat bread, but you could choose to not eat matzah.
I thought it was the whole.
Right. You're not allowed to eat bread, but there's no mitzvah to eat bread or matzah the rest of Passover.
It's only on the first Seder?
Correct. Or the second Seder today, because we're rabbinic, but
And you got the
it's
third Seder.
only a mitzvah. Yeah, it's only a mitzvah to eat matzah on the first night of Passover. All the other nights, if you want to be gluten-free, you can choose not to eat any bread. The first night of Passover, one must eat matzah. Okay, if you have celiac or whatever, if oat matzah doesn't work for you. So what I'm getting to is the matzah that we eat today on the Seder night has, number one, the benefit that we work on it. It's a mitzvah. That means something that we work on. And at the same time, it's after God's revelation. So we have both sides of it. And not only that, since the giving of the Torah, that was one of the problems of the giving of the Torah. It was kind of a revelation from heaven without us working too much for it. 49 days we prepared for it. But since that time on, we've been doing Torah and mitzvos from that time on. We've been working. It's not just God coming and revealing himself to us, giving us a gift, giving the gift of revelation. We've been working on ourselves. And therefore, the matzah that we eat at the Passover Seder has both the benefit of work and the benefit of revelation. And therefore, the Kabbalists call the matzah the bread of faith. It's called the bread of faith. Because the matzah, the whole point of matzah is to give us this consciousness of God. And the consciousness of God that we get from the matzah comes both from our own work and from the revelation of above. You eat matzah tonight, it's not going to do the same thing for you as if you eat on the Passover Seder night.
I have
Yes.
given matzah to my friends when I do it.
Yes.
They say it's a cracker.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
So
Is this possibly, you know what? Baking bread,
making matzah, yeah.
baked in an oven. Before the first Seder, they could bake it in an oven because they were in oaks.
Yeah,
Once they left and they're in the desert, they didn't have ovens.
correct.
So
It
the closest
baked-
to it is they baked it on a hot rock.
Yeah,
but
they baked it
that's
in.
not-
Correct.
That's not the rock cooking it, that's God.
That's God cooking the
Giving-
matzah. Yeah.
Okay.
Or you could say they were in the middle of baking. They were in the middle of kneading it, and then they had to throw it in the oven quickly before they left. Either way you want to say it. But this is the idea. The idea is that the matzah so the point is when we sit down at our Seder, we want to be able to get to a place with our own work that we should feel God to such an extent that just like back then, there was no possibility for it to become bread. We want to feel God to the point where anything outside of God should feel foreign to us, something that we don't want. Let me just give you an example. Let's say, for example, okay, if you are working in around a fire, you know to be careful of the fire, right? It's quite obvious. But if you're working around a odorless, poisonous gas, you have to be with constant vigilance to stay away from that poisonous gas, unless somehow you gain a third sense and you gain a sensitivity to that gas. This is what our sages say is the difference between the Jews before they left Egypt and after they left Egypt. Before they left Egypt, it was like dealing with ego was like a hidden gas. It was like, I don't really feel a difference whether I, feel God or don't feel God. After they left Egypt, the feeling of God was much more automatic. And
the realization of the gifts that were being given because they did not have a way to work for them as they thought they were in the past.
right. Yeah. Yep.
I mean, it's almost like thinking, okay, I did all this work, see how great I am. In the desert, the same occurrence happened, but I wasn't able to do it. It was clearly done
By heaven.
by heaven.
So today it's very interesting because, obviously we don't actually see God, but we believe that that when we sit at the Seder, whatever revelations were available back then are available to us today. And so what I'm saying here tonight is that you have the ability on a Passover Seder night to be able to tap into the matzah both coming from your own effort, as it is a mitzvah, and both as it is coming from a revelation of God.
Are there people today that make their own?
So a good question. Do people today bake their own matzah? You can, if you want to go up to a bakery up north. When I used to be in yeshiva up north, we would go before the holiday to the bakery and make our own matzah.
I
In the
remember
bakery.
doing that as a kid.
Yeah. But it's
This
hard.
is-
It's hard to do it in your house.
This is,
You need a very hot oven, thousands of temperatures. But I guess what you want to take away from this
Do they
class.
do that in some of them?
Yes, they do. I guess what you want to take away from this class is the idea that number one, matzah is the bread of faith. It's called the bread of faith. What does it mean? It's the bread of faith. It's the bread of God consciousness. As you eat the matzah on Passover night, it's the bread of God consciousness. And our understanding is that why are we eating matzah? We want to gain a God consciousness. And the matzah that we eat on the Passover Seder night has the power of God consciousness that is both a great revelation of God to the point where we don't even feel ourselves, right? Where we feel God. You can tap into that energy at the Seder. At the same time, it can also be a lasting feeling. That's the most important thing, because we want to take the message of Passover. It's not just like, oh, only that night I'm going to have a God consciousness. I won't have it the rest of the year. We're supposed to gather the energies from Passover and use it the rest of the year. Okay, we're supposed to sit at that Seder and gather and attain all these different spiritual energies and be able to carry them with us for the rest of the year. And so on Passover, we gain a God consciousness. And it says that's why after Passover, we're allowed to eat bread. Hopefully, once we've learned the lessons of Passover, once we've gained this God consciousness, then as we go into the rest of the year, we're allowed to eat bread because we've reached such a level where bread, meaning dealing with the world around us, which we're susceptible to ego, we can deal with that because we have gathered in the feelings of the Passover Seder. So I hope that all this elevated your matzah experience. And so we've now explained why when we sit at the Seder, we mentioned the idea that that we eat the matzah because it didn't have time to rise because they were in a rush. Because today, now that we live past both of those events, we have both elements in each matzah, the element of God's revelation and the element of our work. And that's why, okay, and that also explained technically why one matzah was written with a vav, why one matzah was written without a vav, and hopefully you have a better idea of why the Torah seems to be saying two different things. All right, with that, I want to get to some practical ideas for Passover. Who's ready to go on this ride, or any questions on the previous topic? You ready to go for a ride? Okay. Okay. So here we have, all right, we're going to go into some technicalities of Passover. 1 second, let me check the chat. Okay. All right, let's take a look at this chat over here. No, okay, let's take a look here. The laws of Passover. All right, so we're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about what we need to do before Passover, a little bit of the list, and a little bit of the meaning. I'm just going to use this website as a framework. So we understand, actually, I'm not going to start there. I'm actually going to start here. Okay. There are 5 prohibitions in the Torah that are written about chametz, about leavened bread. If you, I gave you a paper. If you have it on the table, you can look at it as well. So here are the 5 prohibitions. Prohibition number 1 is from Exodus 13:7. It says, "And no chametz shall be seen in your possession within all your borders for 7 days." Notice how it says, "shall be seen in your possession." Okay. Number 2, the prohibition of chametz being found for 7 days. Leavened bread shall not be found in your house. That means even if you don't see it, even if you own it, you're not allowed to have chametz. Now you understand why we go so crazy cleaning up for Passover.
You're gonna buy mine?
Well, I'm not going to buy it. I'm going to sell it for you.
No, I'm selling it to the guy in the store. I'm giving it away.
Number 3, the prohibition of eating chametz. So let's assume you don't own any, but your friend wants to put some bread in your mouth. Can't do it. You shall not eat anything leavened. Number 4, the prohibition of eating mixtures containing chametz. Chametz should not be eaten. So even if you mix the dough crumbs into something else, right? You mix some breadcrumbs into your matzah crumbs or whatever else it is. All right, number 5, the prohibition of deriving benefit from chametz, as it is stated, and anything leavened shall not be eaten. So, which the sages interpret to mean benefit. That's for another time. But let's give a simple example. Can I can I work at McDonald's selling burgers on Passover? I am now benefiting from, well, McDonald's has another problem, it's cheeseburgers, but can I work at a bakery? Can I work at a bakery, even if I'm selling to 100% non-Jews? Can I work at a bakery on Passover? No, because I'm benefiting from bread. How about can I own stocks in Panera?
They didn't have that.
I would say yes, because that's benefiting.
So you're not allowed to own stocks in Panera.
You sell your stocks before Passover.
Very good, very good. You should sell your stocks.
Well, if it goes up. Yeah.
Now, if you own mutual funds, it's a little different because you don't necessarily have to own every element of the mutual fund.
I don't know what's in all those things.
Right. So there it's a little different because there you don't have a specific stock. But if you have a very specific stock of a real bakery, you should include the stocks in your sale of chametz, which we didn't get to the sale of chametz.
Well,
We'll get to a little bit later.
Stocks in the bagel bakery in Williamsburg.
All right. So understanding that we cannot own chametz and we cannot benefit from it. Now we will delve into some of the laws that we need to do. So we also understand we need to be careful as Passover comes. Okay. So for example, I stopped eating bread in my room. Why? I don't want the crumbs. I need, it's not enough to not see it. I don't want to have it in my house. Okay. So let's take a look. Here are some things one should do before Passover. Just some simple practical examples. Avoid a sticky chametz. Okay, so if you're eating pizza and you're walking around your house and touching the walls and touching everything, okay, if you eat pizza, wash your hands carefully. This is a problem for my house. Okay, Play-Doh is actually flour and water.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I
Problem.
It's actually,
All right.
I thought it was clay.
Another example, if you have books in your house, don't read them while you're eating lunch. And if you do, make sure you clean off really well, right? We know how much we dirty our books. Or your computer, your keyboard. You'd be getting lots of bread on that too before Passover, okay? Just got to be careful. My advice before Passover is get one of those blowers where you can blow the keyboard, right? The pressurized air.
Like Nushin does. Come down, move out.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So, all right. Starch, it's not really a problem. Most starch is corn-based today. All right. Here's another interesting thing we do a month before Passover. It depends on your opinion. And that is not eating any matzah. So there are different customs. The Chabad custom is 30 days before Passover, we do not eat any matzah. Why? Because we want to be desiring matzah. We want it, when the Seder comes, we really want that matzah. Others have a custom not to eat matzah 15 days before Passover, and others have a custom not to eat matzah just the day before Passover.
I stopped at Hanukkah.
All right. So here's a question. What if, are you allowed to eat, can you eat matzah balls?
No.
So the answer is you can. Why? Because once you cook it, it's no longer like matzah anymore. It has to be matzah that you can fulfill your obligation with.
No.
So matzah is supposed to be baked. Once
So if you have chicken soup, you can put matzo balls in now?
Correct. You can still put matzah balls in it this time of year. Yep. Yes, correct. Okay. It's considered the taste is altered enough that it's not a problem. All right. Another thing you should do now is look at Haggadahs. Today there are so many beautiful Haggadahs. I actually saw this new Haggadah out there, or it's not new actually, but they have a sale on it. But there's a Haggadah out there that transliterates every single part of the Haggadah. Okay, every single part of the Haggadah. If you want to follow in Hebrew, it'll write it for you in Hebrew. Pretty cool. But there's also Haggadahs that have less. It'll in English letters. It'll write the Hebrew. No, you have to buy it.
Would you say it changes the?
It's transliterated. It has all the Hebrew transliterated.
Oh, so you know. Oh, okay, I misunderstood.
Yeah. So, or there's so many great Haggadahs with great interpretations and stuff. Now's the time. Don't wait till the day before. Oh, I need a Haggadah. Now's the time to think about getting your Haggadahs. Okay.
Every year they come out with better ones.
Another thing to think about, talking about the 30 days before Passover, which we're a little closer to that, is about thinking about people who need to check chametz who are traveling. So if you will be traveling for Passover, speak to your local Orthodox rabbi. There is a commandment to check your home for chametz the night before Passover. But what if you're not going to be home? So speak to your Orthodox rabbi about that.
I don't have one.
You don't have one?
No, Rabbi Berg is not Orthodox.
Okay. Another thing is to purchase. If you're married, you have kids, you should get nice stuff for Passover, so everybody will enjoy the holiday. says it's a biblical commandment to make sure your family has an enjoyable holiday. So if it's jewelry, if it's clothing, if it's shoes, whatever it is, they're supposed to enjoy the holiday. Also, it says to buy Passover candies. Okay.
Oh, that nice. Publix.
The other thing you probably want to get is
Right.
Passover vessels, right? We don't use our same pots and pans on Passover as we do during the year.
We have all the
So-
dishes, everything.
So
Dishes,
now's the
everything.
time. Now's the time. You need those appliances. You need those things. Now's the time to look. All right. Here's an interesting one. It says you're supposed to say, you're not supposed to look at a meat and say, I'm getting this meat for Passover. Why? Because people might look at you and think you're buying it for Passover lamb. We don't do that
Passover
any.
what, lamb?
Yeah, the Passover lamb, which was back in the biblical times. Anyways, I'm not going to get too much into that because it's a hard one. All right, another important one is don't complain about Pesach. I remember years ago.
Come on,
I-
if you has to complain.
I remember years ago they made a song called I've got the Here Come Pesach Blues. Okay. But it was an interesting song. But if you complain about Passover, how do you think, first of all, you're gonna feel, and how do you think your family members are gonna feel about Passover going forward?
Negative. Negative. It grows.
Negative, yeah.
They love it.
All right. Another thing as we get closer to Passover to think about, we have a forum on our website. It's called Ma'ot Chitim. It was a widespread custom in all Jewish communities that as Passover came, they would give money to the community, to the poor, so that they can afford for their Passover needs. If you want, we have a fund on our website. If you know of another fund, that's good. The one should ideally give some locally.
I saw you.
Yeah, ideally one should give some locally. Of course, you can also give.
How do you determine who gets it?
How do we determine who gets it? By the way, I think I didn't send an email. Next time I'm gonna have to send an email for the class also. But anyways,
I saw something on it this morning.
I sent a text. I didn't send an email. So anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah, this fund. Yeah, you can give to Israel, but ideally one should also give locally as well. There's a famous story of a rabbi. A guy came to him and says, "Rabbi, can I drink 4 cups of milk for the Seder?" So the rabbi realized if he's going to be drinking milk at the Seder, he probably also didn't have any money to buy any meat. So he gave him not only enough money to buy wine, he gave him enough money to buy meat.
You told us already.
I told that story already. Yep, it's good you remember. It's not a joke. It's a real story.
Well,
All right.
with you, I never know.
Another custom is as the month of Nisan begins. So that's the Hebrew month in which Passover falls in.
That's in a few days.
The month of Nisan, well, I'll tell you when it is.
Isn't today the 19th of Adler or
The
something?
month of Nisan is
Is today the 19th? Tomorrow's spring. Spring is springing tomorrow. 20th of March. We had the Ides of March.
Eyes of March.
That's the 15th. Tomorrow's spring.
Okay, so we have Nisan begins on March 30th. March 30th. Okay.
So is today the 19th of
Yeah.
Adler?
So the custom is we do not today is the 19th. So we do not say any of the Tachanun services for those who are familiar with what the Tachanun service is in the prayers. Okay. Some people have a custom not visiting the cemetery, but that's fine. Some people have a custom not to fast. There's also an extra prayer
You know,
that we say during the month. One second, there's an extra prayer we say during the month. It's called the Nasi. So the tabernacle was established on the 1st of Nisan. That's when it was built. And each day, one of the princes of Israel would bring a sacrifice. And so we read about it. In the back of the blue siddur, you'll find a section for the month of Nisan, and there's special prayers there to be said, starting from, what did I say, March 30th or whatever it was.
I've been reading that because I have that book.
Yeah, so get in the back of it. Okay. There's another.
I send money to my cousins.
Okay,
Some of
good.
them need it, some of them don't.
All right. So there's another interesting custom, which many people, or law actually, many people don't know about. There's a blessing to be said when you see a tree sprouting, blossoming, a fruit tree blossoming in the month of Nisan. So again, the month of Nisan starts, let's get the correct date again,
Is tomato plants considered a fruit tree?
is March 30th. What?
Tomatoes are a fruit, is that considered?
I think it has, so it's
It's
not related to the technical term fruit in
know,
secular parlance.
They need.
It's,
oranges
yeah,
and
trees, yeah.
and citrus. but
Correct.
I've got like 50 tomatoes on my tomato plant.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a blessing to be said over the trees, and that is right here, okay? Then we have All right, we spoke about nuts and clothing. All right, there is a special reason to celebrate the holiday of is it the Shabbat before Passover? We'll get to that. Let's move along. Okay. All right, so here we're going to talk about a little bit about, and we have another like 10 minutes. We're going to talk a little bit about chametz, okay? Leavened bread and its issue. So let's take a look here. There are a number of different commands and prohibitions regarding owning and eating chametz on Pesach. We showed them to you before we started this, okay? And Jews are crazy about this, okay? When it comes to Passover, we're crazy. We clean our houses like crazy. The Arizal writes that somebody who is careful to avoid even eating a small speck of chametz, of leavened bread on Passover, will not inadvertently sin the entire year. Okay, so that gives you an idea of why that's so important, and as well as the whole idea that, again, if leavened bread signifies ego, then we understand just how important it is to avoid eating chametz.
Going back to my childhood, my grandmother had like was it from Feathers or something?
Yeah. That's the night before. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll get to that. All right. So what is chametz? All right, how do we define chametz? Chametz is, it has to be a species of grain, okay? So it has to be B. You have to have, depends on the liquid that was used. C, what's the leavening process? And D, edibility. In other words, in order for something to be forbidden, you need to have all four of these elements. Let's talk about them, okay? Number one is what type of grain. The grains that are forbidden are wheat, barley, rye, and spelt. So if you make it with rice flour, if you make it with corn flour, millet flour, potato flour, all of that is not biblically forbidden.
But we don't eat rice.
We don't eat rice, the rabbis forbade it. But biblically, it's important to know the difference because
Some people
the rice, though we don't eat it on Passover, you're allowed to own it because it's only forbidden rabbinically. Anything biblical, you have to put away.
But some people do eat rice. They said,
Right, some people eat rice.
I
Yep,
don't-
yep. All right, here's another interesting thing. How does something become chametz? There's a debate how long it takes, but there's a debate about juice. So that's why there's a problem. You ever see egg matzah? Egg matzah creates a problem for Passover because there's a question that if you use not water, use something else instead of water, that that bread may never become leavened.
With the egg monster, they put in apple juice.
And here's the problem with apple juice. Is it pure apple juice or is it apple juice mixed with water?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Because it's much easier.
Anyways, and Ashkenazic Jews do not eat egg matzah or fruit matzah on Passover. So it's important to know if you're an Ashkenazic Jew.
It's easy for it to digest.
I don't even know there is fruit ones.
Oh,
I yeah.
Well, I haven't
It's,
seen fruit, but
It's interesting.
egg monster does use apples. I don't know
Okay.
what kind of-
All right, so we're gonna skip this part. Okay, so how long does it take dough to leaven? There's a debate, but we always go with 18 minutes, okay? But that 18 minutes can go faster if you allow the dough to heat up. So there's all different ways that it can rise. Anyways, stick away from flour and water on Passover. All right, here we have what's known as matzah ashira. Some Sephardim eat them, but Ashkenazim will never eat them. It says, however, an old or sick person who cannot eat other matzah may be lenient to eat matzah ashira, to eat this egg matzah on Passover, even if they are Ashkenazi. And so that is
okay with that.
correct.
Because I buy that for her.
Yes. Okay. All right. Then the next thing is that if the dough or whatever it is becomes disgusting to the point where even a dog would not eat it, it is no longer considered chametz. It is no longer considered leavened. It is no longer a problem. Now, what does that mean? That means practically, if you owned good leavened bread and it became spoiled on Passover, you still have to get rid of it because when Passover started, it was edible. So you have to make sure it is non-edible before Passover starts. Just to give a simple example, okay? Your garbage can may have pieces of bread in it or whatever. I always suggest either rinsing it out or rinsing it out with bleach or something, or getting
Oh,
it
no.
clean. So you have to be careful.
The garbage can that city takes,
Yeah,
I have it out in the driveway, never in the house. I still have to clean it out? Well, I'm asking.
that's a good question. Who owns the bin?
The city.
Ah, see,
It says on there, owned by
by me, I rent the bin.
No, mine says owned by the city of Dunedin,
So then it may be different.
but I never bring it in the house, not
Okay,
even in the garage.
all right, so that might be different.
Okay,
We'll talk about garbage cans.
Could it be?
Yes, could it be what?
At your neighbor?
What, your garbage can?
Yeah.
But if it's your garbage can, it doesn't help.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, it creates a problem, by the way, we're going to talk about in a moment. If like my garbage pickup is Thursday morning, all right? So what do I do with all the bread that I generate on Thursday and Friday?
Mhm.
How do I get rid of it?
Everything in
It's the problem. All right. Okay.
No,
So,
they take mine on Tuesday,
huh?
so I got a whole week before Passover.
all right. So there is a positive commandment for one to destroy your chametz beginning midday of Erev Passover. So that means on the day before Passover in the afternoon, if you own anything, you have to destroy it. All right. So preferably don't own it when it starts. Okay. There's also a prohibition against benefiting. All right. There's a rabbinic obligation to check your house for any chametz. Okay. Now here's an interesting one. All right. What is considered ownership? We said you're not even allowed to own something. So let's say you're a delivery person for a cake. Okay. You work for Amazon, you work for Instacart, and you're going to deliver a cake to someone. Is that okay on Passover?
I say no.
So you weren't,
Well, because you're benefiting, you're getting that money to deliver it.
but here we're going to say there's actually another problem. If you have liability on that object, then to a certain extent, you have ownership over it. In other words, if you damage that cake, are you required to replace it? Right?
No, I just delivered that broken cake.
So that's what he talks about over here. All right. If you do not own the chametz but has liability over the chametz, such as if it were stolen, one would have liability to pay for the loss. It is nevertheless biblically forbidden to have such on your property. It is, however, permitted to have such chametz left in a Gentile's property. So what that means is, if you have a Gentile who says, "Hey, can I store cake in your closet over Passover?" Right? And I don't know why cake, okay? And however, that right, okay, let's pick something else. I don't know. And that cake you'll be liable for if something happens to it. That could be a problem. That could be a problem.
So Passover this year comes out on Palm Sunday.
But the point is,
Easter is next week.
don't offer to guard anybody else's food. All right.
Feed it to the birds.
All right. So now there's one second. Now I want to get to the next thing. There's one easy way to get out of cleaning your house. You can stand up on Passover morning, the day before Passover, and say, all the chametz in my house, I call it ownerless. Ownerless. I don't own it. That pizza in my freezer, it's not mine. Anybody could come take it if they want. Now, biblically, that would work. However, the rabbis, as we say over here, that doesn't work. Rabbinical prohibition says that even after it is disowned, you need to put it in a public place. You need to put it in an area that is public to everyone. Okay? There's actually a
Most manipulative.
well,
It's like, that's not mine.
there are ways to manipulate it. Okay. All right. Here's a question. From what point, and we'll just do a few more minutes, then we'll close up for tonight. From what point on are you not allowed to have any chametz? So the answer is biblically. People don't realize this. Biblically, you're not allowed to have any chametz from the afternoon before Passover. So let's say Passover was a Tuesday night, Tuesday afternoon at Jewish midday. Okay, Jewish midday. We'll get to that another time. You're not allowed to own it. The rabbis said, we're going to push that back an hour just to be careful. So now we're going to 7 Jewish hours before night. You will not be allowed to own any chametz. And then the rabbis, I'll get to Jewish hour soon. And then the rabbis added 8 hours before the night, you have to stop eating it so you can clean your mouth and everything else. So again, so biblically 6 hours, 1 second. So biblically 6 hours before night. Rabbis said 7 hours before night, you should not own any of it. And 8 hours before night, you shouldn't eat it, so you can clean your mouth.
Now,
Yes, what's your
growing
question?
up, We had special toothpaste, special mouthwash.
Yes, you gotta get new toothbrushes. Gotta
Everything.
get,
I'm just saying, that's
yeah,
what,
yeah, yeah,
that's what we did.
Yeah,
yeah.
I can remember for 2 days
So-
prior. Me and my cousins were basically given to our grandmother
Yeah,
to help her empty her house of, and I didn't understand it all.
so, yeah.
She didn't get on her knees, she was quite elderly.
So here's a couple things to think about as you start to clean for your house. Do you have any like oat soaps? Do you have your
Oh.
kids' pasta projects?
Oh.
There are things in your house. You have
Pasta project. What's
the
that?
kids make projects with pasta.
Oh,
Yeah.
No, I never did it, but I don't. They make
So
pasta.
it's important as Passover comes to remember that we're not only not allowed to eat, but we can't even own it.
Is the pasta kosher to begin with?
Now you could technically sell it, as we'll get to next week. We'll talk about selling, but there are ways to
We don't have business.
there are ways to sell the chametz and there are ways to get rid of it. But so here you have you got a little bit of Passover prep. Next, we'll also discuss next week the specifics for this year, because this year the eve of Passover is on a Shabbat, which means life becomes even more difficult.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Then you want me not to complain.
I mean, it's more difficult. Yeah. Okay. So we'll discuss more of that next week. We'll stop here. The point is, time to start cleaning your house, stop eating the chametz all around your house. And next week we'll get to some more details
I know,
of
when you log off,
search and destroy and the Seder. All right. I'll stop recording.
Let her say recording stop.
Stop
Is
recording.
this lady local? Oh, it's recording
Okay.
stopped on my watch.
Did it stop recording?
Oh, I'm overloading. I'm gonna have a stroke.